fellow YouTubers. You know me by my YouTube name, zakkmorganTV, but my name is Zach Williams, and I'm here on this video to reply to all of our little comment tizzies that we had on Mr. Henry Riker, you know him as Mr. Minute Physics, video, Open Letter to the Universe. Basically, I'm going to go over the main points. I had like almost 30 replies, which is great. It's actually it's exactly what I wanted. Even though they're all negative, and I did get terrible ratings for my comments, that's not the point. The point is through argument to try to reveal the truth to people. Okay? That's not my truth, that's not your truth. That is truth in general. Argument is the basis for modern science. Everything needs to be challenged. Which comes to my first point, which is people will assume that because I don't believe in the theory of evolution, I'm closed-minded. Okay? People think I'm a flat earth man. I've heard that a lot. But let's examine that. Back in the days when people thought the earth was flat, it wasn't just this one random idiot guy. Everybody believed that the earth was flat. Everybody believed that the earth was the center of the solar system. This was commonly accepted in that scientific community of that time. It was not odd. Everybody believed it. Much like the theory of evolution today. So, am I closed-minded for disagreeing with it? No, I'm not closed-minded. I'm the one who's challenging what is commonly accepted, which is the basis for modern science, is arguing what most people assume is true. Now we're at a stage where people are teaching the theory of evolution everywhere. Public schools, we all get it. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It matters how we test it. Do we know it's true, or are we just taking their word for it and accepting it without questioning it? Questioning everything is what makes a true scientist, okay? It's not just saying that, okay, I'll take your word for it. I'll believe it because everybody else believes it. It's not being open-minded. That's being very closed-minded. So for me to step up and challenge that is not being some Neanderthal. It's actually taking the initiative of scientific thought. Alright, so one statement that kept recurring commonly in those comments was that evolution is a scientific fact. It's proven. Don't try to dispute it. Don't be a retard. Don't be the one out of the millions who tries to start something. Here's the deal. If it's a fact, where's the proof? And I know I've had several arguments with my current challenge on the factual basis for evolution, but where is the proof? Do you know that evolution is true, or do you know that they say evolution is true? That comment, they, that everybody knows, everybody believes what they say, but nobody knows why they say it. Just because millions believe the theory of evolution doesn't mean it's necessarily true. Alright, and then another one was an attack on my statement about micro and macro evolution. They say that, not they say, but you guys say that there are no real scientists who support this, and if they are, they're not real scientists. You've got me in quite a spot. One person challenged me, find one real biologist who believes in micro and macro evolution, and I'll believe you. Here's the problem with that. You've got me in a paradox, because every scientist who believes in micro and macro evolution, because the theory of the two separate things disproves the commonly accepted theory of evolution, it means that they're outcast from the scientific community because they can't believe in evolution and the dual theory. Therefore, it's impossible for me to find you a real biologist who believes in micro and macro evolution, because I could give you dozens of names of people who believe that, but you'll say, oh, they're not real scientists, they're not real biologists because they believe it. It's circular reasoning, and it's not something I can come up with. I mean, you've got me in a spot, not to say I'm losing the argument about this, it's more or less you've committed a logical fallacy. Alright, now on micro and macro evolution of much heated debate, I have got like over 20 comments referring to that. And the most common thing said was, you're not making any sense, because if you have a change here, and you have a change here, then a bunch of these little changes will add up to the big change we know as evolution, the ape to man, microbe to mammal, whatever. Yeah. However, that is not necessarily true. It's how it works because it's two different things. Let me elaborate on that. I elaborated a little bit in my comments, but it seems like people generally ignored it. So I'm going to say it again in a more visual way. Okay. Microevolution is the adaptation we see every day. Well, that's talking about Great Danes and Chihuahuas. Okay? Those are two versions of the same species that have diverged. They have not evolved apart. They are not different species. They have adapted to their different environments. Like most creationists will argue that something like that cannot happen, but that's illogical because we see it every day. We wouldn't have Great Danes and Chihuahuas if they couldn't adapt. But is this evolution? No, it's natural selection. Wait a minute. Did I just contradict myself there? No, I absolutely did not contradict myself there. Natural selection is a true process. It happens every day around us. Natural selection is like the example that's in every biology textbook ever written as far as I'm concerned. The analogy of in London, the moths by the train tracks, where there was a bunch of white moths, and then a mutation happened, and then there's a black moth, and he spawned other black moths, and sooner or later, because all the trees were covered with pitch from the railroad, all the white moths stood out and all the black moths blended in, so the white moths got eaten off. Therefore, you have black moths left. Perfect analogy for natural selection. However, this is not. This is a microevolution. This is adaptation. It's not a mutation. It's a gene, a recessive gene that was brought out. Okay? If you know anything about Mendelian genetics, this part's going to make sense to you, but if you don't, you'll probably be lost. But for those people who do know, I'm going to illustrate it. You have two moths, okay? They both have divided genes, dominant and recessive. You have one with the gene for white as the dominant gene. You have one for the gene of white as the dominant gene, and then they both have the recessive gene for black, okay? Because white is dominant, they are both white. However, when they spawn, they produce offspring, 3 of which are white, 1 of which is black. That's according to the laws of modern Mendelian genetics. Now let's say we had this whole scenario with the train and the pitch on the trees, and then the white ones are conspicuous, they get eaten off, so we have the black one left. Well, in order for the black moth to be black, it has to have 2 recessive genes, which means it can no longer breed a white moth. You see, it's lost genetic material. It hasn't gained. It hasn't evolved to a higher state. It's evolved for a lower state, though it did adapt to its environment. Because now it's a black moth, it blends in, but it cannot change beyond that point. It's stuck being a black moth. That's adaptation. It's according to the genes that already exist within the animal. And it doesn't matter what it is. I gave a dog analogy in my comment. That's adaptation. Now, what evolution is? Macroevolution is mutation. A mutation, a genetic error that is positive. Now, there are several ways I can challenge this. Number 1, look around us. Modern mutations. Is there a single one that you have ever seen in your life that is beneficial to the animal? No. Because if it's beneficial, it's part of adaptation, Mendelian genetics. If it is a mutation, for example, I have a brother who has Down syndrome. It's a genetic mutation. It's a genetic flaw. Do you think he's better off? No, he's not. No, he's not at all. In fact, most children with Down syndrome don't live past the age of 10. That's a mutation. That's a common mutation. There are no positive mutations that we see in the world around us. You might argue, hey, in Thailand there was a baby born with 3 legs. However, the 3rd leg was not usable. It in fact was such a genetic impairment, he couldn't use it. He couldn't walk with it. It was just there. It was hanging. No genetic control over it. And therefore it was negative because it just got in the way. So, therefore, we have our little problem of micro and macro evolution. Again, to recap, microevolution is adaptation according to Mendelian genetics. It has all of the alleles that are already in the animal's genetic code, and it just selects some of those alleles, and they become dominant. For example, white, black moths. but it's a loss of genetic material, not a gain, because traditional evolution calls for microbe to man, simple to complex evolution, which means it's gaining genetic material. Macroevolution requires mutation, which is what Darwin originally suggested was happening. Okay, another example of this is his finches on the Galapagos Islands. One of you put Darwin's Island. It's not Darwin's Island, it's the Galapagos Islands. And the finches were able to adapt to the specific environments based on beak size and how big their wings were and various other factors. However, they were one species, the finch. They didn't evolve into anything else, and they could not evolve further. They could not adapt further. Which means the ones with the big scooping beaks for getting nuts could not produce anything with a smaller beak. It's lost all of the genetic material it needs to do that. Therefore, it's lost the genetic material. It is adapted according to Mendelian genetics, and you can look that up. It's a real thing. It's basically the standard model of how genetics work and are accepted in common science. This is not just some right-wing creationist idea that there's no proof behind it. It's accepted everywhere. Yes, I've challenged that too, and it's actually proved out true. So, that's about it for microevolution. If you have further questions, or if you don't think I explained something clearly, well, comment on it, and I'll see if I can help you out some more. Alright, now we have some specific questions. Unavailable user 96 posed, if there is no such thing as evolution, why do we see change? Why do we see that adaptation? Why do we see specialized forms of animal to do specific things and to survive in specific environments? The reason is the adaptation. It's within a limit. It cannot change species. It can change specialty. Alright, and then Solid Wolf 100 posed the question that if evolution isn't true, then why are apes 98% the same DNA? Well, that's a common misconception. It's one of those little bits where most evolutionists will only show you a little bit of the whole truth to try to make it seem like they're absolutely right. Yes, that is very true. Apes share 98% of the same genomes. However, guess what else shares 90% of the same genomes? Fish. Fish share the same. We are mostly similar to algae. We are 82% similar to chicken, mice, and the duck-billed platypus, okay? Just because it seems like just a slight variation, it's actually huge. It's huge. And it's commonly misconstrued just for the benefit of whoever's presenting the argument. So that's really all I could think of to address. I looked over dozens of comments and I came up with lots of arguments for them. I actually wanted to say a lot more, but YouTube does have a limit. So, guys, I'm very interested to keep up this conversation with you. Oh, and by the way, one more thing I wanted to address. Directly insulting me doesn't offend me, okay? Trying to say that I'm an idiot because I don't believe what you believe. Hey, look at this idiot here. He doesn't believe what everybody else in the world believes. That doesn't do anything for your argument. It just proves that you can't come up with something better to say. I'm sorry, but that's the case. Well, that's all I pretty much wanted to say. Just keep the conversation, the argument logical, and we should have absolutely no qualms. So thank you for your time, guys. If you watch this, I'm actually going to be making a lot more videos. This kind of piqued my interest in this subject. I think it's something that needs a lot of discussion, even though it may be at my expense for the most part. I think it's something that really needs to be discussed. So thank you guys so much. I hope to keep on the conversation with you. Bye.